Hello and welcome to the Sideline Live podcast. My name is Orla Keeling and I am the host of the podcast, where every week we bring you a brand new episode with guests ranging from Olympic champions to local heroes, coaches, support staff and anybody involved in the world of sport. Each week we will dive into different topics, including current affairs in sport, identity, skill, mindset, coaching, and also shine a light on those flying under the radar. So tune in for brand new episodes, new stories, and new insights you've never heard before. This episode is brought to you by Tenaris Recovery, an Irish-owned brand focusing on helping athletes recover smarter, rise higher, and live stronger. In elite sport and on this podcast, we often talk about training, performance, and preparation. But recovery is often the element that gets overlooked and yet one of the keys to reaching your performance potential. Tenaris provide products including compression boots to massage guns and recovery tools, and their range is designed to support muscle recovery and overall well-being. So whether you're balancing busy training weeks, multiple sports, competing at the highest level, or just want to feel better after training, recovery is key. Tenaris are focused on making high quality recovery accessible for all, and as listeners of this podcast you can receive an exclusive discount code Sideline15 in all caps for a discount off your purchase on their website tenarisrecovery.com, which is available in the description box of the episode. Recover better, rise higher, live stronger with Tenaris. Okay, delighted to be joined by Cuala's Director of Coaching, Mark Brennan. Mark, thanks for the time. You're a busy man. Going back to play football yourself?
Oh yeah, straight in. Yeah, back. Thanks very much for having me, Orla. Yeah, trying to go back and play. We'll see. The heart is willing, but the legs are having a bit of a debate with me at the moment. So hopefully now we can get through a few training sessions and see how things go.
Very good. In terms of your role with Cuala, what is a Director of Coaching?
Oh, good question. I think that the high level answer might be just my job, my remit is to try and facilitate the performance and the participation side of the club, be it through players and coaches, to try and allow them to maximise their potential and find their way in the club. And obviously that can be extremely challenging because the two of those are not always kind of mutually exclusive. Or they are mutually exclusive. They don't always tie in very well together. So it's trying to merge those, trying to allow any coaches and players coming through, if they want to, their ambition is to play for Dublin, to win All Irelands, to make our flagship senior teams, that you're giving them every opportunity to do that, along with any of our coaches who really want to push on their careers. And then from the participation side, that we are as inclusive as we can be, welcoming to everybody, and to try to bring as many of our kids through the whole system as we can.
Who was the biggest influence on your playing career from a coaching perspective, and do you still think now you maybe model your coaching after somebody, or maybe it was through learnings of what you don't do?
Yeah. God, I there's so many people. Like when I started off as a player, kind of joining the county squads, it was almost like the inter-county was going through this kind of almost professionalism kind of. It was coming from a very amateur way into almost like, okay, there's an expectation now from players that this is what we want, and there was a little bit of a lag in terms of the coaching knowledge coming through. So I spent a lot of my feels like I spent a lot of my earlier years as a county player actually involved in players' meetings and discussions about management and how we can improve things. So sometimes you're obviously learning a lot about what these coaches and managers maybe did well, obviously, and what they didn't do. I wouldn't suggest that there's any one person that I took huge amount from. There's definitely loads of brilliant coaches that I had that you're taking little bits and pieces from, maybe consciously or subconsciously. And again, that's from my own playing career all the way up from when I started off with athletics and basketball in Old Loughlin, to playing hurling and football, some of those underage coaches that we had there, the time and the effort that they put in, you never appreciate it when you're younger. You just don't. But when you're looking back and you're evaluating some of the stuff, what the work that they did, just being there for you the whole time is nearly half the battle to be in development. Just being there, bringing you to games, looking after you, always showing up. And from my coaching perspective, when I got into studying it, going on to some mentorship programs, spending a little bit of time abroad. Again, you're looking at the next level, the higher level of coaches, what works in professional environments, what they do that maybe can you bring back to the GAA? What are they doing that you definitely couldn't bring back to the GAA? And picking up bits and pieces from everybody. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to be yourself. You have to go out there and make mistakes, review, try to improve them a little bit, and eventually you'll hopefully fall in something that works.
Where did you go abroad out of interest, and what did you bring back?
So my first trip was there's a company called Athletes Performance. I'm not sure if you're aware of them. They originally were called Athletes Performance, based out of Phoenix in Arizona. They're now called Exos. So they run mentorship programs for coaches across the world. Really, they're based in Phoenix, and one of their biggest clients, shall we say, would be the NFL and college students over there who go and they basically live in this facility for a month before they train for the draft. But then they kind of branched out and they would work with some of the top soccer teams in Europe, like Real Madrid, I think Man City, Tottenham Hotspur, and Ajax, where they almost like a consultancy type of relationship they had. So I spent a week with over in Tottenham Hotspur, and I spent a week with Ajax. And after that, then I went and I did an internship in Harvard for about 6 months before I came back to Ireland, and kind of really got stuck into the coaching here and realized that this is something I want to do and I want to pursue as a career.
Is it realistic going to those environments and trying to take stuff and copy and paste it into Gaelic games when we are amateur?
I think it is. I think it is. Coaching is coaching. What I took from them, now I was probably a little bit young. If I could do it again, I'd maybe wait a little longer before, particularly the mentorship programs, before I was more experienced and I knew the right questions to ask and how to maybe carry myself a little bit better. But definitely, with these mentorship programs, so there are a lot of, for example, maybe the Ajax one, there's a lot of coaches come in from all over Europe, and we're all there for basically for the week. I was definitely the least qualified person there by a long shot, but you can just see how these other coaches interact, how a lot of time you have to go out and give examples of your coaching. You might have to take the group and take them for a session, for example, or run them through some games and some drills, and just how fluid some of those other coaches are, how they're able to command a group, their language that they use, the temperament, was really eye-opening for me. Some of the best coaches I've seen in action were on these groups, and it wasn't anything major. It's just how they carried themselves, how they were able to kind of coach on the go, how a game might have been going on, and some of these coaches were able to give feedback as the game was going on. Was a huge learning part for me that I kind of try to take into my own sessions. So yeah, I would definitely say that they're extremely valuable. Like Nick Winkelman, who was obviously I think the IRFU head of IRFU development, he was one of the mentors on it. Barry Solon, who was working in Arsenal, I think he still is working in Arsenal. He was obviously one of the mentors on it as well. So to just kind of meet these guys, speak to them, see how they interact, what's their coaching philosophy. I think it's, as I said, while I was very young doing it, inexperienced doing it, I still think it had really kind of stood to me.
I know you spent a couple of days at Saracens. I was fortunate enough last year to spend a day during the international break, so all the internationals weren't there, but still a serious level, and talk about facility and just brilliant people as well, like really just down to earth, fantastic staff and players. How did you find that experience, and what did you pull away from them?
Oh yeah, that was exactly as you were saying there. Is the it was something I probably noticed in one of some of these other, particularly in Ajax as well, how you when you're always asking yourself, what does culture look like? What is culture? What is development? Just the warmth, almost straight away when I walked in. A friend of mine is obviously was working in Saracens, and he just invited me over for a couple of days. And I was delighted, obviously, that Cuala allowed me to go. Um, like when you walk in, very, very first person that came over and introduced himself and said hello was Mario. Um, the head coach comes over and speaks to me. I hope you did better than I did. I didn't realize I was speaking to the head coach at the start. And I ended up asking him what's his name and what's his role in the club. And he tells me, oh, good God, I wish the ground would swallow me up. But he was an absolute gentleman. And again, I couldn't believe the access that they gave me. I was so grateful for that because they were playing a huge game at that week. I think that they had to win it to get into the playoffs. And they invited me into all their team meetings, their analysis meetings, some really personal meetings that they were having, discussions that they were having, and it was amazing. Just you feel almost like I was nearly a Saracens fan when I was leaving after a couple of days. It was brilliant, and I'm extremely grateful for them all for allowing me in and be able to give me such access.
Yeah, 100%. I had very similar experience, but the one thing that struck me was the lunch. When they brought out the lunch, I was like, there's a different diet here for these lads, and I'm not part of that diet.
Absolutely. I actually made the same mistake. They were serving something, and I was like, "Mother, is this actually for one person, or is this for two people here?" And I said, "No, that's actually for one person." I was like, "Jeez, like this is amazing." It was, yeah, but it was brilliant. But again, everybody else just eating around lunch together. There's no problems at all. And then after lunch, then having every day that have like a team meeting or players that have to give a presentation themselves, very personal stuff. And again, there's no question that I was, allowed to sit in on these things. And again, that's just part of just that warmth environment. And when you have that type of an environment, I think it's makes players feel so comfortable. I spoke to a couple of the players while I was there, and we were just chatting to them about the environment, and they were saying it's so different than some of the other clubs that they were in. And that, in a sense, allows those players, when you're comfortable, you're going to be able to express yourself an awful lot more as a player. You're going to feel at home. And I think that can be a very, very powerful thing to have.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I echo all of that. And I was chatting to one or two of them. One of them actually gave me a lift down to the pitch, and they were saying all the same things. Isn't it funny though? Because we come back here, and while we feel so welcome going abroad, professional setup, if I was to go watch or I was to go ask potentially certain teams to watch, I would be told no, or I wouldn't be allowed to watch, or it'd be a very different environment to going to watch a GA team. We're an amateur setup. It's funny the way we're so secretive here and they're so open elsewhere.
I know, yeah, we're pretty cagey. That's what we are, yeah. And the reality is most teams are probably doing the exact same thing. There isn't a huge amount of variation at the higher level in particular with what's going on. Um, so yeah, it is very interesting. I think it's something maybe that we really should look at, particularly if we're trying to grow the game more, that allowing people to come in and give certain access. It doesn't have to be all inclusive, but certain access. Um, it can be really helpful in actually selling our games and create, not that we haven't got a connection, but really building that connection between the supporters and the teams and making them really feel a part of it rather than trying to work in isolation. Um, even from coaching. Now, I know coaches, I think, are getting better at it in Ireland and GA. There is a lot of sharing of ideas and opinions and whatnot. So that is improving. Um, but I think in general, giving more access to particularly our inter-county teams, particularly in particular our ladies teams, who were obviously always struggling for people to come and watch the games and really sell the games. I think that could be a real great marketing and selling point there.
Even from a coach development point of view, trying to go out and learn and do different things. I was fortunate enough of, I've gone to watch intercounty senior sessions and asked coaches, and they said, yeah, no bother. But just because I have a relationship with them, so it's very different when you're trying to develop as a coach and you're trying to pick things, and you're just trying to spot different ideas. And sometimes there's good ideas outside your club or county or college or whatever, but it's hard to get in the door. Like I find it a bit of disconnect, as you said, from you're trying to develop. So like in terms of coach development, what can we do to improve that on a maybe not a national scale? I'm not looking for you to answer all of the GA's problems in one, but like in terms of your experience in coaching and developing and going elsewhere? What can we do on the ground now?
I think either we do it formally or informally. Having mentors can be really, really helpful. Something probably I never really had myself. A formal mentor, definitely not, but there was always people that I was able to kind of bounce ideas off. I get maybe it's easier because I was kind of had played intercounty and kind of played both sports, and obviously play, college in Dublin, you start develop kind of connections organically. For somebody maybe who hasn't got that type of a background coming in, it might be a little bit more difficult. But in my experience, if you just ask, if there's somebody young coming in, and you just ask a coach in general, can I go follow you there for a couple of training sessions? Can I have a meet you for a coffee? I've never been refused. I don't know anybody who's ever been refused that. It's maybe just having the confidence to do that. In my own role in particular, like I've asked so many people who've from the IRFU, from different sports, from AFL, can I meet them for a chat? And they've all been just so accommodating, because at the end of the day, like we're all we're kind of all struggling and battling the same type of struggles. So everybody loves to kind of talk about it and share ideas and help people out. It's having the confidence maybe just to go and ask the question in the first place, because it's rarely that you'll ever get a no, and I'd be very surprised if you do.
Mm. In terms of when we talk about development from a coaching perspective, and maybe with your role in Cuala, but it doesn't have to be that specifically. How do you balance winning versus long-term development? How do we find that marry the two of them together?
It's a big challenge. I think the first thing you have to ask, like, what does success look like? And for us, if I'm just, I think is winning underage a success? Is winning minor championships a success? Or, realistically, is it really just about your flagship teams? And most of the time, it probably is. Are your flagship teams kind of up around the top table? Are they challenging at the top? That's brilliant. And then success, what does success look like underage? And typically, if you're looking at your participation, if we're bringing 100 5-year-old girls joining the club, how many of those players are still playing by the time they're 17, 18, 19 years old? That can be success. If you're doing that, or you've minimal drop off, well, then you know that there's something is going well underage. You might not necessarily be winning the whole time, or at all, but if your environment would have to be pretty solid in order for you to bring all of these players through. And we know that there's minimal correlation between winning at underage and winning at adult level. Like, I think that's kind of being discussed to death, and we know that it'd be nice. We're not saying that we don't want to win, but definitely doesn't mean you have to. We know that if you've got a 13 or 14-year-old kind of star player, the chances of them still being a star player by the time they're 17 or 18 is minimal. So putting all your eggs into one basket at under 13, 14, whatever age it is, can be a fruitless exercise. So trying to get that message across to all of your coaches and your players, but usually it's just the coaches, to understand that, this is a long-term vision. There's no pressure. And I think it's important as well, as a club, or if you're working at a county board, that your underage coaches understand that there's no pressure on you to win, to bring back cups here. There is maybe an expectation that the standard of your coaching is up to a certain level, and that you know what good coaching is. You know what a good environment for a developmental environment is, and that is maybe an expectation, all right. But if you have that, then I think you have a chance, and we'll never turn away trophies, but we're not going to fall out with people or start having crisis meetings if our under 13 team isn't winning the DA championship every year.
What's the culture in Cuala specifically? Like, they've had so much success at obviously the football club All Ireland last year, obviously the hurling as well. They're obviously going very well in Camogan ladies football too. So there's something there that's been going on, and the work that's been done over the last probably 2 decades, really. Like, Conor Callahan, obviously, one of the best footballers in the country, top hurlers. There's something going on. What is it? What's the secret?
Question. um, Honestly, I don't know. If you're asking me what is the culture, like, I'd like to think that is one of inclusivity, that everybody is welcome, no matter your background, because obviously in Cuala we'd have huge amount of people from various backgrounds joining the club, obviously from different nationalities also. Um, the culture is, I can only speak for myself. Maybe a lot of other coaches or people in Cuala might argue differently, but it feels like it's a small club that obviously has huge numbers, and it's something that we'd like to think that we're quite proud of. The challenges that we have are well spoken about at this stage, but there's never feels like that it's an elitist type of environment where, as we spoke about earlier, that we're going to have kind of crisis meetings because our underage teams are not like our underage teams would not be the best in Dublin. Like we're not dominating underage. Hopefully we've some teams who are doing very well. We've other teams who are, they're at their level and they're trying to improve. But there isn't a pressure on the coaches there to ensure that that you're actually, you're the top two or top three teams in Dublin. Some of our underage teams are, and it's brilliant. But we feel like if we go out and we put that pressure on our coaches, what's going to happen then is that you're going to obviously, your most experienced coaches are kind of going to circle the wagons around your so-called best players underage. They're going to put all their resources into those players, and your B and your C players are probably going to fall by the wayside or become kind of demotivated. If not, they'll just give up. And then obviously what's going to happen then down the line is that you're not going to have you're all of a sudden your so-called best players, they're not really the best players anymore when they turn 17 or 18 years old. So I feel like there's a huge culture there of trying to just bring everybody through, to try and give every player the same opportunity. That might mean that obviously we're not going to win everything on underage. We might win minimal underage. We're not going to be against it if we do, but our players are going to, hopefully we're going to get a lot of them coming through who are understand type of the culture that Cuala is there for them. They're trying to bring it, and they'll really buy into the club then as well, rather than just buying into one team. And they feel like if this is a club who try to do things right, people will treat you right. And when you have that, then you mean you're probably going to give more back to the club then, when you get a little bit older. And that's what you see an awful lot, that our players coming through, they've huge pride in the club. Whether they're inter-county players coming back and they're really driving the standards, because when they put on that Cuala jersey, it really means something to them, because you'd like to think that they've been treated well all the way up along, and there's no animosity there at all. Again, that's my own. I don't know if I went in a bit of a roundabout way of explaining that, but I don't know what the culture is. I just like it the way it is, and we're not perfect, far from it. There's huge amount of areas that we can improve on, but I think generally that it's a warm, kind of welcoming environment where there's a nice bit of drive in the background there underneath, bubbling away, that everybody's trying to be the best version of themselves, but knowing that there's a line that you can't cross either, that it's important that the social side of the club is as important as the performance side of the club.
Love that. We're a big club, feels small, and Cuala rented Dart every county final that they're in, which is funny. But that was the same thing that Kilmacre Crokes actually said. Spoken to a couple of people on the podcast, off the podcast. It's obviously one of the super clubs, but feels like a community club. What's the difference then? Like, you're playing football in Carlow, grew up in Carlow. Give us an insight. Differences between a small club in Carlow and a big club in Dublin.
Oh, where do you start? I think even, maybe even just trying to consider some of these bigger clubs. And I will actually, before I say it, like Cuala is small relative to some of the other bigger clubs in Dublin. There's 4 or 5 clubs there in Dublin who are much bigger than Cuala. Now, I'm not saying we're not a small club. We're smaller on the bigger side, shall we say. But a lot of these clubs, you probably maybe better off consider them as small counties or even medium-sized counties than trying to compare them to some of the clubs. Definitely some of the club I grew up in anyway. There's no real there's no real similarities there at all, definitely in size wise. The numbers is obviously staggering. while we obviously, that's one of the biggest challenges we have, is that we have little to no facilities. So all of our teams are spread out kind of around the South Dublin area and even into Wicklow. And that can be hard. Then the challenges are to try and make everybody feel part of the club, and to try and not have any of our teams be isolated or feel like they're working in a silo. If we want to have a training session down in Old Loughlin or Nave Breed, we can just organise it at the, if I want to have a training session tomorrow night, you could probably organise it, or the manager, in, just with a phone call. If you want to change a training session up in Dublin, you're going to have to go through about 3 different committees to try and get it done, because it's just so tight up there. You're on a pitch for literally an hour. More often than not, it's just 50 minutes, and you'd probably have somebody there standing, maybe pointing at their watch, get off the pitch because they want to get on and use it. Down the country, you can have the place to yourself. You could be there training it from 7 till 11 o'clock at night if you want, and nobody's going to be looking over your shoulder. The numbers is just a different ball game altogether. Like my own club at home, like, we're a small primary school where there was only a couple of boys in my class. My brother next to me was the only boy in his class coming through. Whereas up in Cuala, I think we have 28 in our catchment area. 28 primary
schools. Wow.
Yeah, give or take. There might be a few other clubs who might argue they might be on their side of things, but give or take. And again, trying to, like, we're only in 10 of those schools at the moment. Just through sheer resources and whatnot, it's hard to get out to all of the schools, and that is probably the biggest thing, is just kind of the management of the numbers. You have on paper, I think, maybe you have 500 coaches. Probably, there are arguably maybe 250, 300 coaches who would be active, and then you've got a couple of thousand players. So those type of numbers are more, they'd be obviously closer to a Carlow county rather than to any club down here. And that is the biggest challenge, realistically. And when you haven't got your facilities, your own training centre, it just makes things extremely challenging, shall we say.
Yeah, and we've seen it in the demographic report from the GEA, how a third of the country live between a certain line that doesn't go that far out into Kildare or Meath, and goes down all the way from up from Belfast all the way down to Wexford. So you can see the challenge there. In terms of your playing career, you were a dual player. Is the art of the dual player, is it gone?
I definitely say at intercounty level it is, yeah. I think I was one of the last kind of dying breed of fools, or whatever you want to describe us. I'm trying to do both. Yeah, it is an intercounty level. And if we can make the argument that usually, now again, I'm not going to say this definitively, but usually what happens at intercounty level, the club scene is probably about 5 or 10 years behind that. If you look at most of the larger clubs up in Dublin, it's getting smaller and smaller, the amount of players who are playing dual. Now, we still have a good few of them, thankfully, in Cuala. There's a lot of female players, but if you look around some of the other clubs, the larger clubs, it's getting smaller and smaller, for obvious reasons, variable reasons as well. But it's a tough one, and it's probably a bigger discussion to have. Like, I love both sports. Really passionate about both. I love seeing dual players, but you'd be realistic enough to think that is it sustainable at the higher level if you're trying to be the best. At both, it's a massive challenge, and I think it's only going to get harder and harder unless there are some major changes that happen. And particularly from the hurling point of view, in a way, you'd like to see changes happening there, but what do the changes look like? If we're looking to get, from the bigger picture, more people playing camogie and more people playing hurling, obviously Willie Marr, who I met Willie when he was training Cuala just in the last year, and I started, and great guy. What can you actually really do to improve those numbers? Because the biggest challenge we have to hurling and camogie is Gaelic football. That we're trying to promote both sports simultaneously, which is just, it can be really, really difficult. So long story short, to answer your question, I would say it's getting harder and harder. It's obviously not going to happen anymore at intercounty level as the current season is set up. Now, if they did want to, and I had suggested as jokingly to few people, like, realistically, would if we did want to really promote hurling and even football, that we'd have them at different times of the year. Now, I kind of said that kind of tongue in cheek, but if we ever did go down to that type of scheduling, then it'd have more and more dual players playing, I believe. And at the club level, I believe it is going to get less and less in the bigger clubs. The smaller clubs are probably going to have to do it because there's no choice. You haven't got the numbers. So yeah, if you're looking at Dublin, it's already happening. You get a lot less and less dual players down the country. It hasn't really hissed down there yet, I would say, but it's probably coming, unfortunately, unless there's some scheduling changes really happen.
I think you've hit on something that I talked about recently with another guest, was about how we copy and paste the county model to club. Um, Not sure if it's as sustainable as county. So when I hear about, and you're right in your assessment that what happened to club generally is 5, 10 years maybe after county. It's disappointing to hear that, you know, and look, it's the player's choice, but I think the art of the dual player should be able to be sustained at club level, maybe not county. And I can understand that, particularly with the split season. Maybe someone listening will suggest your completely split season now with one code on one side and one code on the other. There'll be an argument now who gets the nicer weather in the
The thing
in
is
the
the thing, I know.
flip a
Yeah,
coin
yeah,
every year is different. Yeah.
I know,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
is that just because we're just, yeah, with the club level, are we just trying to force it a bit and just copy and paste things in county, or why is it going down that route?
yeah, obviously a lot of the time it's just because it's been done before, so let's do it now. And to try and make any massive changes, like the GA is such a big organization, you know, it's a massive ship trying to turn. So sometimes trying somebody make that call, that big call, which is possibly needed, that if we want to make real change, if we want to see real results, then we're going to have to make some real change. And it's probably just not enough want there from certain people who are the decision makers. Sometimes, unfortunately, these things have to get an awful lot worse before people kind of make changes. At the moment, it's not brutal, but there could be huge opportunities to grow and to make life a little bit easier for everybody. But because it's just everybody's just getting on with it now at the moment, I think people probably just haven't got the energy and haven't got the desire for change, unfortunately. And that's usually just the reality of these situations.
You have a lovely Meath jersey there over your shoulder. Talk us through your journey with Meath. You were involved in back-to-back All Irelands.
Yeah, as I said, I did not put that there on purpose. No, that was a fluke. I never even realized it until the camera came on. Um, yeah, oh God, where do you start? Obviously, that was an amazing experience. From start to finish, like the 4 years that I was there, it was dream world type of stuff. Yeah, it's hard. It feels like a bit of a lifetime ago now, even though it was about a year and a half. But just the time moves on so quickly, and everybody moves on. But when you're thinking back on it, you nearly still get goosebumps. It's just fantastic. One of the highlights of my sporting career.
What was your role in the group?
So it actually started off because my background, my studying, some of it was in athletic development, and long story short, I kind of met Paul Garrigan through working down in Carlow in some teams in Wicklow that he was involved in as I was an athletic development coach. So then he was involved obviously with Meath. He asked me to come up and do a little bit of pre-season work with them from an athletic development point of view, and I did that I think for 2 years. And at that time, I was really shifting over towards my passion was for coaching. It wasn't for athletic development, and he just two of us kind of got closer, and he kind of realized this as well, and and I knew I didn't want to get any party more involved in athletic development, and the team itself was looking to get somebody more full time in, working with them after losing into the two. They'd lost, yeah, the two intermediate All Irelands. So Paul got a great guy, Eugene Ivers, came in as athletic development, and he asked me would I come in as a coach. So yeah, I just came in as a coach for the team from that year on, and yeah, that was my role as a coach for the team.
What was the mentality like going winning Inter in 2020, coming into senior 21, winning senior, then back to back 22? Like, did it just turn into this, this kind of snowball of success? Was that kind of what it was? It was obviously a number of years building, but it couldn't have paid off any quicker.
Yeah, as you said, it was a couple of years building. Once it got moving, it started to move pretty fast. But the team suffered some really heartbreaking results in those two All Irelands, and I think there was obviously going in then to the third year playing intermediate. There was just probably a different type of focus with the group that you just have to do it now. We have to get out of intermediate, and there was a huge um, energy focus put into particularly the way we play, the conditioning of the girls, attitude, just everything. The standards rose, and again, kind of the mindset, which was something that I feel like I've learned throughout the years, is that it was just so focused on kind of performance rather than the outcome, and that can be a bit of a cliche, but in reality, that just looked like no matter every game we played, even training sessions, you're never really looking at the result. Some games you win, some games you lose. You're always, your focus on the performance. You're looking at what exactly did we do well to win that game? What were the elements that we didn't do well, um, to improve? And no matter who we were playing, that seemed to be always the mindset. And the girls were just fantastic at kind of buying into that. So it was never a case that um, you have to kind of plumose the girls and tell them they're brilliant. We knew we had a decent team, but the video analysis, the meetings was all about how can we improve, what do we need to do. The tactical side of things was really coming into the team then as well, and the girls were probably in a position mentally to really buy into it because they'd just been sick of losing the last two All Irelands, and they were willing to do anything. And they become really, really comfortable with that. That obviously kind of snowballed then as well. We got a little bit more confidence from that, and yeah, from there, it kind of really started to grow, the confidence in the group. There was some tough days as well, but because we were never really, even when we went up senior, the mindset was still, what's the performance? We're trying to improve. We're trying to improve. We never mentioned, okay, we want to be winning the All Ireland. Maybe it was there burning in the back of our minds, but we never really said it out loud. But it was all about what can we do to improve. And even when we played a couple of challenge games, I remember the year before we played Dublin in the final. We played Dublin in a challenge game in DCU, and they whipped us. I think they bet us by about 25 points. Um, but even from there, it was a case of, okay, they gave us a lesson here, but it almost gave the group confidence because we knew, looking at the video afterwards, exactly what things were going wrong, exactly how at the time the way we were playing wasn't going to work. The girls knew that, and we had to change. And gradually, then we started getting some other challenge games against senior established like Galway. Again, they beat us, but there was no heads down. It was okay, yeah, they didn't beat us by that much. We know we have to improve on, and gradually just grew from there. The confidence, the focus, just being part of a group where just the sole priority is football and trying to be better. It can be a fairly powerful thing, and something that I'll never take for granted. I'm very, very fortunate to be a part of it all.
So the secret there is, well, you don't want to lose two All Irelands, but lose two, realise that we've nothing to lose if we change things up. But the mindset, it's how you approach it, it's how you talk, it's how you analyse. It's beyond just the physical element of it.
Absolutely. And maybe the point I'm trying to make is that if we had maybe gone up senior and saying that our goal, and really kind of spoke about a lot, was we have to win the All Ireland, we have to win the All Ireland. It means then that anytime you have little bumps along the way, it might cause the group to be quite negative, and you might lose confidence in what you're doing. Whereas if your goal is always just about performance, just about improving, and obviously you need to know what does that actually look like, because performance is just words. So what does performance look like when you're doing your video analysis, when you're looking at your stats? What exactly are you trying to improve here? And it's important that the management team all know it, but the girls themselves knew it. And by the end of it, they knew it inside out. And so then every time, you go out and you play, like we think we played Cork in the first game maybe in the group stages, when we went up senior, and again they beat us by a couple of points, but nobody was heads down. Nobody's really negative afterwards, because again, we're improving here. We're not where we want to be. We're not currently the best team in Ireland, but we're improving. We're on the ladder. We're making steps. I think that's all we need to do. And when you have that type of mindset, it means you can go training then during the week in a positive note, rather than, oh God, we lost. We're not the best team. I thought we were the best team. We kept saying we were the best team. And then everybody's kind of negative, and you start throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe you're trying some tactical work in training and the matches, and then maybe it didn't really come off too well. Well, that's all. We need to throw all of that, get rid of all of that. It's all useless. Get rid of tactics. Let's just go back to the way we're playing the whole time. And again, that can snowball negatively too. So yeah, your mindset is just absolutely crucial. And just having that group, having that leadership group that we had there, having a management team there, everybody's aligned and in sync. It's it's amazing what can be achieved then.
Well, I think speaking of Cork, was it the semi-final when you were down, was it down 6 or something? Down 7 even, and, like,
Yeah.
I don't remember the timing of it. But, like, what was do you have a good recollection of that couple of
Well,
minutes?
as I said, I have a head like a sieve typically, but I do remember that all right. Yeah. We think we were down by 7 points. I think we had got did we kick a ball wide or something anyway? I think they had a kick out, so we're trying to get a press on their kick out. The girls worked a good trap, or high press on. They got a trap, got a turnover. I think we got a goal off that, and then yeah, things went well from there. Although again, it wasn't perfect, because I think we went a point up, and then we decided to put a really really high press on afterwards, and we got overkicked on it. And I think Cork were unfortunate maybe not to get a score, if I remember correctly. So again, that was a great performance. But what did we not do well in that game? What is the things that we can improve on? And that was literally just the mindset then going into the Dublin game, was that this wasn't far from a perfect performance, but we could take the energy off it. And there was such a brilliant, was it 3 weeks I think we might have had going into that Dublin game afterwards, and just the level of, the attitude, the standards of the training was just amazing going into that game against Dublin. And yeah, it's all coming back to me now. Nearly getting goosebumps here even thinking about it. Oh, that's great.
I'll move on quickly as a dub. I don't want you to be too delighted there. But speaking of the kick out in ladies football, one thing that we don't see a lot of in the game is high catching in ladies football. Typically the catches into the chest, hands are kind of, palms are upwards in terms of, actually you can see your fingernails more than the palms. So instead of, when we switch it around then and go above our head, we don't really see that in ladies football. Should we advocate for a mark to be introduced?
Well, I wouldn't be against it for sure. Yeah, like ladies football in general obviously has gone through the roof in the amount of players that are playing it at the moment, and it's in a good place. Um, the skill level of players probably does need to, hasn't risen to the same level, which is absolutely normal. Um, if you look at obviously the catching, be it kind of into the chest, or we call it hands catching, or overhead, and even the kicking then as well, there's huge scope for improvement there. There's a handful of the top players in the country now playing ladies football who can do those skills, and like, to be honest, they kind of stick out a mile just because they're actually able to do them. So underage, you're always looking at what are the functional skills of ladies football in particular, and how do we actually coach them into them. And we just need to be very careful that we don't overcoach certain things, as you said, the catching. Like having that chest catch, like personally we wouldn't try to encourage our coaches to coach that into our players. We want everything to be done with the hands. We find that if you're a chest catcher, or you push the ball back into your chest when you're running, that it leads to a low skilled type of a player. The kicking again, I think we're all on the same wavelength regarding the punt kick, and how it is the bane of my life, and how it should just be banned. But trying to get our coaches to understand the hook kicking, again, a term that I only kind of learned when I went to Dublin. We'd always just call it just kicking the ball. But in obviously it's the terminology important. So the hook kick, getting our players, underage players, to practice that, and then hand passing after that. There's really only 3 or 4 functional skills that we really need to be coaching into our underage players. And after that, then you just your auxiliary skills, which I believe the players will pick up organically through the games, and we don't need to put a huge amount of effort onto them. But they are crucial. And again, from a ladies football point of view, from the kicking as well, which there's, it's probably at a level where it's definitely not where it could be. But if we look at a lot of our training sessions then, and it comes back to, it's easier design training sessions with a huge amount of hand passing drills and games involved in them. So probably making that effort to ensuring that the kicking element is as important and is as focused in your training session planners as the hand passing. That's really going to pay off in the long run. It's going to probably be ugly at the start. It's going to feel weird, but that will absolutely pay off in the long run, both at club and inter-county level.
What are the auxiliary skills you mentioned there?
If you think about even soling with the ball, blocking the ball, tackling, to consider them all auxiliary skills. The functional skills, we describe them as ones that you just need to be able to play the game and play a very close relation of the game or of a match. The auxiliary skills then are ones which are, you don't necessarily need to know them to play the game, but they are a part of it. And if you're able to have the functional skills nailed down, then the auxiliary skills will be able to just peppered in throughout the game. And a lot of the time you're just going to learn them organically, so you don't need to put a huge amount of effort into them. Whereas the functional skills, if you don't put effort into learning them at the start, it's extremely hard to coach them into players when they hit the juvenile and definitely when they hit adult level.
Interesting. Well, I've asked nearly every guest this question. What's the most underrated skill in Gaelic games at the moment?
Ooh, underrated skill. So uh, I think well, from a male point of view, is obviously trying to be two-footed. I think everybody's nearly given you the answer that I could listen to on your podcast. Yeah, at the in the men's side, being two-footed in football is like a game changer. Being just your handling and hurling, I think, being able to catch that ball without it kind of fumbling and dropping out. If a lad kind of drills you a pass, you're trying to play through the lines, not being fumbling that ball, having to take an extra touch off the ground. Because most players now are able to strike it left and right, but you'll notice that the elite players, it's just their handling, to be able to snap that ball and not be fumbling it. In ladies football, I would say kicking. And I don't mean two-footed. I'd probably be killed for saying this, but I wouldn't encourage our coaches to be work on both feet for ladies footballers. I think the evolution of the game is it's not far enough along the way for us to be expecting our female players to be able to be two-footed. If they are, and the odd player, you're going to have your special kind of players who might be able to do it. But generally speaking, if you're working in training sessions and you're limited to time, particularly in Dublin clubs where you're so limited, what is the most important thing? If we can get a lot of our players to be able to kick the ball properly with one foot, that would be, amazing. And camogie, then we probably the exact same as my hurling answer for camogie is just handling of the ball, just being able to catch that ball high, low, left and right, without it falling out of your hand. It's just a game changer, that you're going to give yourself so much opportunities to get out of trouble. But sorry, and I will say maybe probably on the ladies' side in particular then as well, it's just general, maybe it's a skill, but it's general game sense, an understanding of being tactically aware, or, maybe people are going to roll their eyes when they hear this calling, but like situational football or situational camogie, that they understand that hurling football, male and female, it's just made up of situations. And a lot of the time, certain situations are going to crop up more than others. If you were able to understand those situations which crop up more and you were able to control them, and as a team how you're going to react to them, that can give you such an advantage there. But obviously having players who have a strong game sense and are able to identify that themselves is really, really important. And that's why trying to get our underage players, it comes back to this philosophy of just game-based coaching. The more games or format of games that our underage players play, they're organically, again, we will be just developing that game sense and that sporting IQ. If we only do straight line, closed games, closed drills, there's no wonder that our players then are going to have kind of a low sporting IQ or a low game sense, and you're going to be pulling your hair out as they get older, trying to explain tactical awareness and situational plays to players as they get a little bit older. And again, if we can nip that in the bud when they're younger, that would be amazing.
So a bit of that is watching the game, but also in training, giving your players or coming up with situations yourselves where we're down 2 points, or instead of kicking the ball in from the middle of the pitch, let's put it on the sideline, or let's do a kick out, or let's pretend we're down, player with a yellow card. What do we do? What do we do if we're up a player and they have a yellow card? It's about exposing them to situations and testing it and testing ourselves against it.
Yeah, and that's probably even the small percentage stuff that you'd be looking for. The larger percentage, if we just speak about it, is what do we know is going to happen? We just say hurling or football, for example. We know there are going to be times when we lose the ball high up the pitch. We know there are times when we're going to probably be in attack and maybe lose it, maybe top of the D, we lose the ball midfield. So they're all we can classify them as when we don't have the ball. Okay, what do we do when we don't have the ball? Do we know exactly what the team is going to do when we lose the ball high up the pitch? Does every player in the pitch know how we're going to start, either pressing high or defending from there? What are we actually going to do? The same from when we have the ball. We know there was times we're going to win this ball in our full back line. How do we actually try to transition that ball up the pitch? We know if we get a turnover, around our 45, we know there could be a good chance of a fast break on here. Do all of our players know exactly what they're to do in that situation? And we know those situations, they're going to come up in every game that you play. And there's a high chance a lot of them are going to come up fairly frequently in each game. So why wouldn't we be coaching this into our players when they go down onto the pitch to make them more comfortable, to make them more familiar? And it's amazing then the power that can give the team, the confidence that it gives them, and sometimes even the freedom that it gives them, because they know that there's nothing going to surprise them really when they go out. The team is in sync, all their energy is aligned, they know exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And they're also, as they get a little bit more, they're going to know that's not always going to work out the way they want it to, but it kind of shifts the scales in your favor a little bit more, and it gives you a real, I don't want to call it a coaching advantage, but just a general advantage you're going to have over the opposition. And if you've got half decent players then as well, that's amazing. That you're going to be in a really, really good place. And that's probably, I suppose, more so what I mean by the situational football. And really that's probably just a fancy term from just playing a lot of the game, or you reverse the engineer the match back to whatever situation you think that you want to work on. Maybe it's something that you want to improve yourself as a team, or it's something that a different way that you actually want to play, and you just reverse it, engineer all the way back to small components to really familiarize the players with it, and then you start just building it almost out from there. And again, as I said, that's probably what I mean by situational football. And again, apologies for the fancy terminology that I know some of your listeners are probably going to hate, but that's kind of what I mean.
You'll be getting loads of abuse after this.
Yeah, I know.
I know, I'm only joking. My favorite question, Mark: what separates the best from the rest? What's your take on it?
Oh, best from the rest. God, good question. Uh, I just maybe the easy answer is just that consistency, that persistence. That no matter what happens, they're going to be at the training. They're going to be working on their game every single day. Now, whether you want to there is huge probably correlations between a bit of selfishness with the elite players, the elite teams, that this is going to be their priority in their life, and they're not going to let other things get in the way of that. And sometimes that can come across as selfishness, but it's just reality. Success, being elite, whatever. It's not always pretty. There's a lot of stresses that you have to go through. But I probably would say, if I was to jump on it here now without thinking too much about it, I think that is maybe what I've seen throughout some successful teams, successful players across different sports. It is just that consistency, that pure focus, that to a point where it's just pure obsessive, But unfortunately, that's if you want to be the best of the best of something, you have to be obsessive about it, and there's no way getting around that, unfortunately.
If there's someone listening that is a player, for example, or a coach that is known for being inconsistent? Is 7 out of 10 one day, 3 out of 10 the next? How do they start? How do they try build it?
So the player is kind of 7 out, or the player himself is inconsistent.
Yeah, sorry. In a team environment, they have a performance one week, they're off the charts, and the next week they're doing nothing, and it kind of continues, kind of a bit of a wave every up and down.
Oh, well, gosh, with my coaching hat on me, I'd probably be looking at, um, is it because the team has maybe changed from one week to the next, that something has happened there that allowed the player to express themselves positively in one game, and maybe they kind of got a bit negated maybe the next day? So is there something maybe from a team point of view that we have to shift? Or maybe it's just the nature of the beast that if you've got one player and they were fantastic and one day, well, chances are they're going to be doubled up on maybe the next day. They're not going to get that space and time. But then having that conversation then with that player to know that, okay, that means now that what you're going to do is maybe something, give up a little bit of yourself for the greater good, which is the team the next day, and to allow somebody else to express themselves. If it's something like maybe their performance, their technical ability is dropping from one game to the next, then I'd really probably be looking at what is that person doing in training. If their skill is breaking down, is it because maybe are they training enough of the skill, or we say the skill is what's movement in context, as we say. So they could be spending a lot of time working on the movement, which might be the kicking of the ball or the striking of the ball in isolation, but they might not necessarily be working enough of it in the context, which there's players around them, there's different environments, etc. And you will notice if sometimes with players who have these kind of dips in performance, that a lot of the time it's because they probably spend a lot of time working on the movement in isolation, and maybe not enough of the time working on in the context of that movement, which is effectively building that skill. So then when they're faced with different environments, different situations, different moments in games, they're not able to execute because they haven't necessarily seen this, if that makes sense, this picture in their head previously in training. And then the different picture leads to maybe a little bit of panic and unfamiliarity. And then that's maybe why the skill breaks down, because it's not automatic for them. It's not instinctual. Don't know if that made any sense to you there now, Orla, but that's something we would probably look at.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Conscious of time, both of us have to head off to training, so I'm going to fly through the sideline seven. Same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Mark, what is your favourite quote starting off?
My favorite quote, I think it's more of a speech probably than a quote. It's the Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. I think that's something when anybody's kind of annoying me, or you're getting abused as a coach or something like that, or as a player, I always kind of come back to that it's the fact that obviously people should just check it out. I think it's brilliant. It's effectively kind of done that. It's easy to be a critic. It's easy to be somebody on the ditch just shouting in, and nobody wants to live like that. Or being able to get out, and even if you fail, failure, trying something is so important, rather than what does he say, just living in that twilight zone or something. Can't remember now the exact word of it.
It's class. I
Yeah.
don't know it I don't know it either off the top of my head, but it's class. Best sporting event you've been to? Pick one as a coach, one as a fan.
One as a coach, one as a fan. One as a coach. Oh, I probably had some great days, obviously, with some of the teams I worked with, Michael and Carlow, there in the camogie side of things. But it's hard to beat that Dublin v Meath, our first All Ireland, just from start to finish, from the whole day going in, when the Garda escort picked us up. I think I spoke about this before, but it was just amazing. I've been in a few Garda escorts with players before, and a lot of the time you don't actually really need the Garda escort. It's more just of a novelty, but definitely needed it that day. And the way they were able to just maneuver through everybody. I said to somebody, geez, if we can play with the same fluidity that these guards are working on their bikes, we'll be doing well. And then as you get in closer to Croke Park, just to see everybody out, all the pubs were filled, cheering on the bus. Again, these are type of moments that are just so fortunate to be able to experience, and so grateful. And getting the win at the end was quite nice as well. Bit of the icing on the cake. Yeah. What was the other one?
I think the hill being open as
Yeah.
well just changed the way Croke Park looked and stuff. And it's been disappointed that it hasn't been open since. I know it was open for COVID reasons, but it was just epic. And in credit to the Meath fans, as a dub, He's fell the hill, in fairness. Sorry, as a player, I think was the other one.
As a player, as a player, best event, probably I definitely didn't appreciate it at the time, but being able to play kind of for Ireland in the Shinty against Scotland over there in Fort William and Inverness was the other time, and just hearing probably my favorite national anthem, the Scottish national anthem, Flower of Scotland, being played was amazing. Even though the game obviously is a little bit of what do we call it, a glorified challenge game. Though you're getting pulled across, but yeah, so that was amazing. Now, being as a player, obviously being able to play in Croke Park and captain your team, your Carlow hurlers in Croke Park was a close second, or maybe even up there as well. But yeah, that was great event to be at. What was the other one then as a spectator? So hard to beat All Ireland final day. Definitely, I would say that as the game itself, the entertainment value. You go to NFL, being the NBA games, the pageantry is unbelievable. I was fortunate when I was in Harvard. Harvard played Yale in the Ivy League kind of final game, and the college game day. I don't know if you've seen them. So they were actually at it as well, because I think it was a big memorial game. That was amazing. But the most memorable one was I was actually traveling in Buenos Aires, and I went to a Boca Juniors game down there, and got long story short, we were up with the away fans, and from start, like the stadium, and I mean, I wouldn't say even rocking, it was literally shaking, and we were terrified when we went in, until we realized this is actually meant to happen. The stadium is meant to move so much forward and back. It was scary. But then the Boca Juniors, I think when they won that game, they're going to win the league. And we were up in the top tier with the away fans, and it was all fine up until about half time, and then things started to get a little bit loose. They were just throwing everything they could down on top of the Boca Junior fans below. And then when they got bored of that, they started kind of attacking our tourist group, and we had to with their spokesperson, or I don't know what they call him, their leader of the away fans group, told one of our tourist guides that we have to leave and we have to get out because they're going to attack us. And they'd already started at this point, so we had to basically run out of the stadium. As we were running out, they did attack us, and they kind of, what they had is this little blade, and they start slitting the trousers of people, so all their wallets, phones, everything falls out, and then they grab them and they run away. So they got a number of our guys, and then as we were kind of walking underneath the stadium, then they were just firing everything down on top of us, so we had to basically scatter to the buses and get out of there. So that was memorable, to say the least. I went back a couple of years later to Buenos Aires to see if I could go to another game, because I sucker for punishment, but apparently they don't bring tourists now anymore and I think it was because of what happened to our group that time. So yeah, that was probably the most memorable one. The game itself was absolutely brutal, so maybe that's why they started getting bored and started attacking us. But yeah, all long story short, All Ireland final day. Just go to the hurling and the football, you won't beat it. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, that's probably the most unique experience I've heard for that answer. I'll give you that, Mark. Question 3: biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
As a player, I've kind of suffered with injuries my whole career, and that has been, it started off as being kind of really just frustrating, and then it led to almost me becoming very bitter and cynical towards the whole thing. When you can't do what you want to do, you can't train, particularly like I'm at my happiest, and anybody knows me, just when I'm out on the pitch playing, and I just love it. And when that's taken away from you, it can be very, very frustrating. But then what happens then is that obviously a lot of people just started commenting, and you're the lad who's always injured, or that lad only plays the championship games or whatever, and remarks are being made, and that can turn you fairly cynical and bitter very quickly. So that's been going on a long time, and I can't say that I've actually dealt with it very well. A lot of time you just have to bite your tongue. So that's probably been the biggest challenge, which really, it is very, very difficult, both mentally and physically, to be able to deal with injuries.
Yeah, I can relate. I can relate with you there. On the flip side, biggest achievement?
Biggest achievement as a player, or as a coach. As a player, there's probably a couple of them lead into one another. I'm from such a small village down here, hurling and football wise. I was very fortunate to be able to win senior hurling and football titles, to be part of a group of players who were able to achieve that. I'm very, very lucky, fortunate for that. That then obviously led on to got to Captain Carlow, and I've the great title. I don't know if it's a great one or a bit of a sad one, that it's the first Carlow person to captain a team and win to lift a cup in Croke Park. Again, that might be more sad now than than a great achievement, but anyway, it is what it is. And then obviously just getting to get picked to play for Ireland, even though as I said, they're just a kind of there's nothing majorly serious about it, but being able to put on an Irish jersey is something special. And definitely, I did not appreciate it at the time, but as you get a little bit older, you start to appreciate these things. As a coach, it's hard to obviously look past the whole experience with Meath. I had some brilliant times with Michael and with Carlow, Camogie. Fantastic days there, and they obviously led me on to some very, very fortunate for that too, to kind of end up in this position. So from my career then, biggest achievement, God, again, to be able to, I suppose, to be in my current position, to be director of such a an esteemed club like Cuala, very, very such a brilliant club. Again, not just because of what they've achieved. It's just the people in the club, how welcoming they are, to me. With since I've been there, it's been amazing, and the respect that everybody shows. Very, very fortunate to be a part of that, and hopefully I can do it justice. Yeah, I think does that answer it? Did I miss something there?
Question 5. Advice to your 18-year-old self. What would you say looking back?
Oh God, don't be such a dope. 18-year-old self. Uh, Definitely don't take your father's car out for a drive and stick it in a ditch. That would be the first thing I would say. If I could avoid that, that'd be brilliant. After that, I'd say if there's no effects in terms of this butterfly effect, where if I change something and then I don't get to maybe achieve what I did, I'd say don't join I got asked to join the Carlow senior squad when I was doing my leaving cert. That was a bad decision upon reflection. I probably spent a huge amount of time when I was younger just in the gym, feeling that the gym was going to solve all of my problems, when in reality, obviously it wasn't, and it shouldn't have been a main priority. If I to any 18-year-olds, athletic development is important, but once you have it, don't overdo it. If you have extra time, spend it on skill development, getting out and working on that. 18-year-old self, and then obviously there's just some bad decisions, because they lead you to where you are right now. But I went to college. I chose to go to college in UCD just because they had the best sporting facilities at the time. Didn't care what course I was doing, and yeah. But again, I don't want to be, like as I said, there's a lot of stuff when you look back, because you nearly cringe a lot. It's the person that you were, but if you have to do that in order to get to where you are now, I probably wouldn't change a huge amount.
Yeah, good answer. That's usually what people come back to. Question 6. Dream dinner guest and why?
Dream dinner guests. I'd love to. This might sound very sad now again, but probably Pat Ryan and maybe Jim McGuinness.
Oh, deadly, yeah. That's not sad. That's a great dinner party.
You think?
I think so. I joined that dinner party.
And yeah, I don't mean it in like a cynical way. I have such respect for those guys and what they did. Obviously, like, they're amazing. But just to trying to get their insight in the year. I'd love to pick Jim's brain on some of the tactics and etc. that they used throughout the year and why they did certain things at certain points. And obviously then Pat Ryan, the juggernaut that is Cork hurling. Everything kind of that went on there. What did he learn from it, etc. Because they had some year. It's and I don't mean obviously that in a negative way. They were amazing. They just, whatever happened in that 30 minutes in the second half, we can't brush over the fact that they were super team all year long and have been coming for a while, and they're so good for the game of hurling itself. So yeah, I'd love to chat to them. if Madison Beer wants to come along and discuss kick out tactics and zonal v man-to-man defenses, I wouldn't say no to that either. But yeah, I'll take that.
Very good. Very good. Final question. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
What's the boring one? Maybe New Beginnings or something like that. Obviously, it's just in the new job. Trying to. Probably my playing career is coming to an end, even though I refuse to maybe accept it. So yeah, we'll see what the future holds. But there's a lot of kind of, being a player for so long, even though I haven't played much now the last couple of years, it's something very, very hard to walk away from. And that's when it's such a part of your life. And maybe when I was younger, and maybe I still am, it's when it's nearly your whole identity, and that's obviously not a positive thing. It can be quite negative. It can be very, very hard to walk away from that and have something in to fill in the void. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but that's maybe a loose kind of a draft chapter title, shall we say.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Speaking of playing, both of us have to head to train. Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thanks, Orla.